Hi everybody, I'm Brian. Let's go do some woodworking. Hey everybody, welcome back to the shop. It's been a while since we made a video, and I'm happy to be back in the shop making some new videos and some new content. Today's video is brought to you by Atlas 46. They're the makers of the tool belt that I've been wearing all day and several other things that I use here in the shop. They're a great company. They make really nice quality items. This is called the Hamilton Woodworker, and it was designed specifically for woodworkers. It fits a block plane and a small square and rulers, and it's really specific to woodworking and working in the shop and finished carpentry. And it's a great little tool that I've really come to use every day here in the shop. And today we're going to make a square, a layout square. Now, why would we make a layout square if we have one of these? Well, these squares are great, but they really, if you're laying something out on a flat surface, they really fall short because you can't make it sit nicely on the flat surface because the blade is up in the air. So if you're laying something out on a flat surface, you really need a layout square because you can register all the edges, you can make nice square lines, and you can check the insides of cabinets. There's a lot of different uses for a square like this, but the main purpose for making it is to illustrate how to make a bridle joint. And the bridle joint on the corner here is the purpose of today's video, how to make a bridle joint. And rather than just make a sample joint, I thought, well, let's make a little project. So we put together this nice little square, and let's get to it. That's what we're going to make today. So here's some of the tools that we'll be using in today's video. We'll need a good sharp block plane, low-end block plane, that's always important. I'm using a jointing plane to get nice straight edges, and a nice sharp handsaw. You could have either one of these, you don't need both of them. A marking gauge, very important. Some sharp chisels, and a few layout tools for making dovetails like a bevel gauge and an angle gauge. Some more sharp chisels here. And with a few basic hand tools is what I use to make this, apart from the machines in the shop, which is what I cut the joinery on. So let's get to it. So I'm going to start by milling my stock to make the square. And I'm going to check the fence for squareness. And it looks good. And the little square is the most important tool in the shop, so make sure you have a good square to always check that. And I'm going to joint one face and one edge that are adjacent to one another, so that when I do my milling, I can use those two surfaces against the fence as a reference to cut my stock. So once I've jointed those two faces on the jointer, I'm going to mark them so that I know that I've jointed a face and an edge. So I've got my two faces marked. I know which edge is going to be down and which edge is going to be against the fence. And I'm going to resaw a couple of small boards out of here. But before I do that, I'm going to take my square again and double check that the fence is perfectly square to the table, which it is. And once I've checked that, then I will measure to get the right distance between the blade and the fence. I'm going to cut these at about 7/16 of an inch, maybe a little bit more. I'll cut them to a half, and then I can run them through the planer and take them down. Okay, so I've got my stock milled up and nice and flat and straight, and I have one nice square edge. So I want to cut both my pieces to the proper width, and I've decided that's going to be something like 1 3/8. Don't want to make them too big. Check that the teeth of the saw are just above the wood, and I'm ready to go. have all four sides flat and square to one another, and they're nice and straight, which is what we want. You know, these are going to wind up being rulers, so they have to be dead straight, which they are. And so the crux of the issue which we've come to is making a bridle joint, which is how we're going to join these two pieces of wood together. Now, rather than taking all the time I need to measure something here, I'm just going to use a marking gauge. And I'm going to set the marking gauge a little bit wider than the piece. So that marking gauge is sticking past the thickness of the piece by maybe a 32nd, less than a millimeter. I'll set the marking gauge there. And the bridle joint is going to have one piece that's going to look like a tenon. So it will have the center preserved, and the other piece is going to be the bridle portion, which is going to have sort of an open-faced mortise on all three sides. So I don't need to scribe a line all the way around both these pieces. I can decide which one I want to be my tenon, so it doesn't matter. Let's say this one, and I'll take, and using the reference fence on the marking gauge, score a nice sharp little line on there. So I know that's the edge of that. And this one, other side too. I've checked my end cuts with the square to make sure that they're dead on. And I'm just going to roll off the edge of that just a little tiny bit. I'm not going to go all the way across because I don't need to. And on this one, I'm only going to do two ends where the mortise will be visible. Okay, so now that that's done, I could also take the time and lay out, with a pencil, draw my tenon, draw my mortise on there, but that takes a lot of time to do, and I don't really need to do it. And you'll see why when we go over to the bandsaw. But the only thing I want to determine right now is how thick I want these to be. So my piece right now is about 7/16 of an inch thick, and when I'm designing a bridle joint, the first temptation is to have the joint divided into thirds. So 1/3 here, and then the tenon would be a third of the thickness, and then another third here. And aesthetically, that's the nicest looking, but structurally, you actually want the tenon and the open mortise to share the same amount of wood between them. So you actually want to divide it in half. You want, if this is 7/16, I want a tenon that's about 7/32 of an inch thick, and the remainder will make up the cheeks of the open mortise there. So what we'll do is, I'm going to say that I want 7/16. I'm going to say that I want the tenon to be about 3/16 of an inch. And I'm going to shoot for that on the saw first. And so we'll go over to the bandsaw and we'll make the cut. Alright, so I just have a little pencil line on there that roughly tells me how large the mortise is going to be, the open part of this bridle joint. And the measurement isn't that critical because we use the joint itself to lay out the next part of the joint. Usually in joinery, that's almost always how it works. First, you make one part of the joint, get that finished, cut, clean, square, and then once that's done, that's used to lay out the next portion of the joint. And that's exactly what we're doing here. I've got a rough pencil line, kind of know where I want it, so I'll lock my fence down, and I'm going to cut up to that little cut line that I made with the marking gauge. So whenever I'm going to pare the end grain of a joint, I sharpen my chisel first. And I've just cleaned my stones up, and I'm just going to touch this up on an 8,000 stone just to make sure that it's nice and sharp, because I don't want to tear the wood as I try and pare across the end grain. And when I'm doing this, I just feel the bevel. There's a flat surface on there. I don't want to go past it. I don't want to be before it. I just feel, this is a very small chisel. This is a 1/8 of an inch chisel. So I just feel for the bevel angle where it is and just hold it there. That looks pretty good. Just touch the back a little bit. So I've clamped my piece to the bench. I can see my little cut line that I made with the marking gauge. And I'm going to use my chisel to go in and follow that cut line down into the wood. And I may actually pick this up and pare at it later on to get the middle and just hold it in my hand instead of having it clamped. But now I've done one end there, remove that little tiny bit of wood, flip it over, and I'll do the other side. Okay, so now I'm just going to hold it and do it. Pared away all the wood inside there, and I'm just going to take my square and I'm going to check that as I put the square in, it's registering right down on the cut line on that end. And that means that it's nice and square on the inside, which is what I want. I don't want any wood left over in there that's going to hold up the joint. I can actually feel one little piece of wood with the square. You can see it kind of click in there. So I've got a little bit of something inside there holding it up. Perfect. And now we can go back to the tenon and make the next part of the joint. Okay, so again I'm gonna use the joint that I've already made, the half of the joint that I've already made, to help me lay out the rest of the joint. And I'm gonna do that by coming over here with the open face mortise and lowering the table saw blade so that it is going to cut just slightly less. I don't want to be flush with it because that's too much. I want to be just under. I don't mind cutting away a little bit of the wood afterwards. So just under the thickness that I need. Push that blade around, make sure, yeah, that's going to be fine. So now I have my height adjusted, and I'm using a stop block over here, and I've lined it up with one of the teeth and my cut line. And you can see that little cut line from the other side that I sort of extended around the corner. Lines up perfectly when I butt up against here, so I can make a cut on both faces, make a cut, and they're going to match exactly. So here we go.